Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm doing my May wrap-up and my June TBR. I did manage to finish 7 books in May. Some of you may remember that most of those books I actually started way back in April, never finished them. I did finally finish them all in May, plus a few extra. So I'm referring to May as my catch-up month. I caught up on all my reading. Haven't caught up on videos, but I'm getting there. So let's talk about the books I finished in May. Overall, there weren't any that I hated. There are a couple that I did have some issues with. You'll see. But for the most part, I really did enjoy everything that I read. I will say, though, that nothing like totally blew my mind. Like, I don't have any new favorites or anything like that. So without further ado, let's jump into the ranking with my 7th favorite book of the month, Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. Now, I know that this is a popular YA book. It's about a young girl who has this mysterious power where she can't touch anyone or, like, she'll kill them. Kind of reminds me of, like, Rogue and the X-Men. Like, her touch is deadly, and there's this, like, evil kind of organization that wants to use her as a weapon. And of course, because this is a very dystopian tale, there is a resistance that also wants her to join up with them. I know this book is popular. I know there are many books in this series, but I don't understand why. I don't understand why. I have so many questions about this book. And to be fair, there's a lot of books in the series, so maybe these questions get answered, but, like, they never fully explain what her power is. They don't explain how it works. They don't explain why it works on some people, doesn't work on some other people. They never really explain, like, how she ended up in this, like, prison that she's in. Like, they allude to the fact that her family, like, turned her in, but they never really give you any of the details. There's just vague statements. And then there's this guy that she knew in school somehow, and he, I don't know, was in love with her at school. He never, like, the whole thing makes no sense. I have so many questions. None of them were answered in here, which I am not a big fan of. So I don't want to totally, like, trash the book, because I do see that there is an interesting story here. It does have vibes of, like, the Hunger Games and X-Men and, like, a lot of things that I enjoy. So maybe if I read more in the series, a lot of those pieces would come together and I would like it better. But right now, I don't have any desire to continue with the series. But for those of you that have read it and enjoy it, let me know why I should continue with this one. My 6th favorite book of May is going to be The Dark Tower by Stephen King. This is the 3rd and final book in his epic Dark Tower series, and I really need to talk to people about this book. For the majority of the book, I really enjoyed. I think it's got a lot of stuff going for it, because this is the culmination of everything that's happened in the previous books. Roland and his friends on this quest for this mysterious tower, and they're finally getting there. But the ending of this book, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of the ending. And I knew going into it that the ending was polarizing. But I stayed away from reviews and videos. I wanted to go in, clear mind. I didn't want to have any preconceived bias or notions. So that's what I did. So when I got to the end of the book, like the last page, my first reaction was like, wait, what am I, like, what? That's it? I must have missed something. So I actually went back like a few pages and, like, read it again just to make sure that, like, what I read was, like, that was what actually happened. And I'm like, okay, like, that's not the ending that I would have chose, but I think I see what Stephen King was going for here, so I accept it. It's not what I wanted. Then, afterwards, I went online and I started like reading discussions and explanations and all of people's theories. And I realized that what I thought happened, or what I assumed happened, was completely different from what everyone else was saying. So, yeah, the ending of this book is very much open for interpretation. It's very open for interpretation. And I am not a fan of those type of endings. I'm just not. I love my endings tied up with a neat little bow. I don't want to have to think about it. So I thought I knew what this ending was. Apparently, I did not. So I need to do some more research before I do like a full breakdown, full review, spoilers, or anything like that. Because I just want to read more about what people have said. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the ending. It didn't work for me. So more to come on that. So those are the only two books that I had like quote unquote major issues with. So everything else is just like minor stuff. So my fifth favorite book of May is Virgin Earth by Philippa Gregory. Now, this is a straight up historical fiction, and it's actually a sequel to her book Earthly Joys. These are not popular Philippa Gregory books. I haven't really met many people that have actually read them. So, and I can see why, because these are very chunky, long books, and they are very historical, and they're very dry. In the first book, we followed a man who was the gardener of the king, and this is a time that was like very tumultuous in England, with like different people trying to claim power, and this man's dedication to his king and his faith and his cause like led him down all these paths. Now, in this book, in the sequel, follows the son. And the son is like the complete opposite of the father. Like, he is very conflicted. He doesn't know where his loyalties lie. He doesn't know if he should follow the king, if he should follow the rebellion, if he should follow the Protestants. He doesn't know where his faith lies. The man doesn't even know like where his, like how he feels about his family. His wife died in the first book, so now he's remarried to this woman that his father had picked out. He's pretty horrible to her through most of the book. He leaves his family for long periods of time. He basically runs away from his family, from England, to go to America, the newly settled place. So this book is kind of split. He spends half his time in the New World, meeting the Native Americans there and experiencing this whole other life, this whole other country. But then he goes back home and like, again, things are crazy. Like there's a king that's killed and yada, 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 all sorts of stuff. So on one hand, I like this book better than the first one because I thought that his struggle, his internal struggle, was a bit more interesting than the first book, where we had a character who knew who he was and knew who he wanted. But by the time he got to the end of the book, like, I feel like he didn't really learn much. Like, kinda, a little bit, but like not really. He still seems like the same guy he was in the beginning. So I feel like everything that happened to him, it didn't really teach him any life lessons. So it kind of felt like a waste of time. So again, another book that I enjoyed most of it, and then I got to the end and I was kind of like, well, that's not a great ending. It's depressing, like it's not hopeful or joyful, and it's kind of just, well, this guy was a, butthead during his life, and he's still a butthead at the end. So, I don't know. Yeah, take of that what you will. My fourth favorite book of May is The Two Foxes by Nicole Pierman, aka Nicole's Bookish Nook. Now, I know Nicole has written a bunch of books. This is the first book that I've read from her. Hopefully it will not be the last. And this is a book, it's kind of a mix between historical fiction and fantasy about a young girl growing up in, Protestant era, again, America. and she realizes that she's kind of being like oppressed with the Puritan faith and their culture. She runs away, she joins the local Native Americans, and she has these visions, and she uses these visions to kind of help the Native Americans not become so enslaved to the settlers. So right off the bat, it was really interesting to read this book at the same time as this one, because they both deal with Native Americans in the situation between Native Americans and the settlers. This one was much more like historical history fact. This one I thought took a much more like hopeful approach. I feel like from a reading perspective, I prefer this because it is, again, a bit more hopeful, a bit more positive, a bit just more enjoyable to read. But I do feel like this one is a bit more realistic, considering like what actually ends up happening to many Native Americans, if that makes sense at all. So anyway, so it was really interesting reading these two together because they covered some of the same subject matter. Now, as far as our like actual plot and characters go, again, I like the characters in this one a lot better than Virgin Earth because we don't have so many buttheads in this book, or the buttheads are true buttheads. So our young protagonist, Sarah, there's one scene in particular where Sarah goes through something quite traumatic. That was my favorite part of the book. That was my favorite part of the book because you really see her struggle, like not just emotionally, but physically, and she has to overcome that. So Nicole, hopefully you'll probably watch that. I want to see more of that because that was my favorite scene in the whole book. So really enjoyed this little indie historical fiction fantasy, and I am definitely open to checking out more stuff. So now we're getting into the top 3, all books that I really enjoyed, none that like blew my mind out of the water, but number 3 is going to be Dark Side of the Moon by Sherrilyn Kenyon. If you don't know, I read a Sherrilyn Kenyon book whenever I take a trip. I went to Chicago in May, so this was my plane book. They are spicy, supernatural books. And this is like the 9th one in this series now, so like these books are very formulaic. Human, normal woman meets supernatural, sexy guy who's been alive for 1,000 years, like can't be in love, but of course they always fall in love and they have lots of steamy sex. Now, I will say that it took a while for the steam to appear in this book. It wasn't until about halfway through, because we have a situation where our 1,000-year-old guy is like turns into a cat, but he's also kind of a vampire. Honestly, I don't really pay attention to the specifics. I just kind of let it wash over me because it's so ridiculous. But I will say that this book, I feel like, took the lore and the world building of this whole like Dark Hunter world and really expanded it. I feel like it's been expanding as each book has gone along. And I'm impressed by that. I'm impressed at the way that Kenyon can continue to build on these characters, these different characters. Also, a lot of these books so far have all taken place in New Orleans. This one takes place in Seattle. So totally different like area, total different set of characters, total different set of dark hunters and like their world, but yet still like references to characters that we have already met and know and love. Still references to like, there's this one guy, Acheron, who's kind of like the head dark hunter. He kind of oversees everything. He's in every book. He's this very mysterious character. He's here too. I love all the scenes that he's in just because, I don't know, he's such a cool character because he's so mysterious and all-knowing, but he doesn't let anyone know that he's all-knowing, but like we, the reader at this point, know that he is. I just really enjoy his character. So I think this one was fun overall. It's there's a little bit of like a murder mystery mixed in. That was fun. The steam when it does happen, that was fun. It took a bit too long to get there, in my opinion, but overall, a really fun book in this series. My second favorite book of May is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is my first Naomi Novik book, but I'm certain it won't be my last because I did enjoy this one. It's not perfect by any means, and I've had multiple people tell me that like many of her other books are better, which is exciting to me because I did like this one, but I'm excited to read ones that are better. So in this book, we have a young girl in a small village that lives near these enchanted woods that are like, you know, bad, dangerous, evil woods. You can't go into the woods. And the reason that the town is able to survive is because there is this guy, this wizard known as the dragon, that like protects the town. But in exchange for his protection, he takes one woman from the town to like basically be his quote unquote assistant. So through a series of events, our main character ends up going to live with the dragon. And of course, when she gets there, she finds out that he's not, you know, what he thought she was. She finds out that she has this kind of secret power that like no one knew about. Basically, she's a witch. I don't think that's a spoiler because you can literally see her doing magic on the cover. But long story short, she gets pulled into all these politics with like the king and the queen and the prince, and the queen was taken by the woods many, many years ago, and now there's this big thing to rescue her, but like things go awry. So it's a really good story, I feel like, it very much reminds me of like just a classic fantasy tale. Just a classic solid fantasy. You've got witches and wizards and magic and princes and battles and fighting and evil woods. And at the heart of it, it really is a story about a woman finding her own power. And I love stories about, you know, strong women, and I feel like this did the job. Now, I do feel like the book was like a bit wordy at times. I feel like there was a couple things that went on that could have been wrapped up a little bit quicker, but overall it was a really solid fantasy, a really solid read, and it makes me excited to read more from Naomi Novik. So I've already heard Spinning Silver. That's the one that people keep recommending to me, but if there's a different one, let me know in the comments below. And finally, that brings me to my number one favorite book of May, and that is The Bloodcarver by Vanessa Lee. This was a surprise to me because it has been a super long time since I have like really enjoyed an Owl Crate book. It's been a long time. Like, I've actually canceled my YA Owl Crate subscription. I'm just going to do the adult books for now because I just have not been impressed with their books. But this one was really enjoyable. First, let's just take a minute to look at the gorgeous cover and the beautiful stenciled edges. There's actually a heart there, which is super cool. So this book is about a young girl who has this power to basically like heal people. So she calls it heart soothing. So basically she touches someone, and if you have like anything wrong with you physically, she can fix it. She invades your brain, your heart, your lungs, and she can fix things. Now, she gets pulled into this murder mystery because there is this wealthy family who recently lost their father, the head of the family, the head of this rich, pretentious family, and they think that he might have been murdered because he died under mysterious circumstances. And the one person that may have any information about what happened is in this coma, and no one can wake him up. They've had all these doctors, everyone has been trying to wake this guy up, no one can do it. So even though these heart soothes are like really looked down upon and shunned, they're like, hey, if you help us like wake up this guy, if you can figure out how to heal him, we will pay you all this money, yada, yada, yada. So our main character here, who pretty much has kind of lived on the outskirts of society, all of a sudden she gets brought into this world of excess and privilege, and she's like, yeah, I want to live here. Like, so she is trying to figure out how to wake this guy up so that they can find out what happened, who murdered him, yada, yada, yada. The longer she spends with this family, though, there's all these little secrets that start coming out. She finds out maybe she's not the only heart soothed. There's also like this doctor who's trying to heal coma guy, and she's like, I want to beat him. I want to show him that my, heart soothing is better than his medicine. Like, it's a really fun story. I love the murder mystery aspect. I love the characters. I love the way that the author explains exactly how her healing works. Like, actually explains the anatomy of, like, I have to go into the thalamus in his brain. Like, even though that stuff normally would totally go over my head, I feel like she does it in a way that makes it easy for anyone to understand. And I think that is really, really cool. Now, I don't know how much of the story is inspired by her heritage, but the author, Vanessa Lee, is originally from Vietnam. I believe she's probably the first Vietnamese author I've ever read, so I would love to know how much that influenced the characters, this world, even the magic. But I think that's really, really cool. Again, it's not like the best thing I've ever read, but it was a really solid book. It was a really enjoyable story, and yeah, I would definitely read more from her. So that is it for May. So now I am quickly going to go through all of the books that I picked out for June. So I'm going to start out with my reader recommendation of the month, and that is The Bone Ships by R.J. Baker. This was recommended to me by End of Sight 9841. I think this is the first time you've recommended a book to me. I've definitely heard of R.J. Baker, but I'm not familiar with this series at all. I'm only a few chapters in, but it's very much giving me like John Gwynne, Joe Abercrombie vibes, kind of that like grim, dark fantasy. We've got, pirates, or at least they seem like pirates to me. That's probably an oversimplification, but really cool world so far, really cool characters so far. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this one goes. Next up, I am continuing my Stephen King journey with The Colorado Kid. And I am so thankful that this is a short book, because after The Dark Tower, I needed something short. Also, this is a hard case crime. I know King has written a couple of these, but this was his first one. So yeah, looking forward to a nice, short, succinct King book. Next up, I have my adult fantasy for the month, and guess what? It's another Sherrilyn Kenyon book, The Dream Hunter, because yes, that is right, I'm going on another trip this month. This month, I'm actually going to Mexico for a wedding, which I've never been before. Super excited about that. In fact, so excited that this is what helped me pick out my rando book of the month, and that is Mexican Gothic. Get it? I'm going to Mexico, Mexican Gothic. I'm so funny, I know. So this is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I have read one book from her so far, Velvet Was the Night. I've been wanting to read more because I've heard such good things. So yeah, because I'm going to Mexico and this is called Mexican Gothic, it felt like a match made in heaven. So really looking forward to diving into this one. Next up, I have my YA fantasy of the month, and what I did to pick this one was basically look for my shortest YA fantasy, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I've never read anything by Kerri Maniscalco before. I know she has some popular books, and I know that this whole series is popular, but because it was like about 300 pages, again, I'm going to be gone for a while because of my trip, this felt like the perfect book to slide into my TBR. And finally, that brings me to my book box book. Again, tried to find the shortest one I could, and that is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrews, or Andrew, sorry. Again, this is a new author to me, so I believe that's 3 new authors this month, which is great because one of my goals this year was to at least read 1 new author a month, and I am doing really, really good on that. I have heard a couple good things about this book, so hopefully I'm on a streak here, and it's as good as the last Bloodcarver. So there you have it. That is everything I read in May, everything I'm going to be reading in June. So now I want to know from you, how many books did you finish in May? What was your favorite? What are you going to be reading in June? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section below. And in case you're wondering, the ferrets are slumbering. It is hot as heck in New York today, so they are in hiding, but they'll be back soon. So until then, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.